Hi everyone, this is Professor Benjamin and we have finished week 1 of this course. So at the end of each week I usually send out a roundup. This roundup will either be verbal like this through an audio video feed, or it also will be sometimes typed out to you. So one way or the other, usually each week, either on Sunday or Monday, I send out a roundup of what happened last week and what's to look forward to in the week to come. Last week was our first week, so always a little bit of a struggle because it's the first week of classes. There's a lot going on, so you have a lot due. So I saw some really good things, which was a lot of people did understand the requirements for the course. I could tell a lot of you already had access to the text, or you used the PowerPoint in order to gain the information you needed to answer the questions. Some of you are still struggling with the requirements for the course, so initial posts are always due by Wednesday, response posts by Friday. Initial posts are always at least 300 words. They contain in-text citations to show where your sources are used, and they contain the actual source at the bottom in proper MLA formatting. By Friday each week, there's always a response post due to a fellow classmate. That response post has to be at least 200 words. Also, in initial posts, we do not use our opinion at all, so we shouldn't see any I statements like "in my opinion" or "I think." In your response post, you're more than welcome to use those because you're responding to an individual based upon your feedback. So they're just like the little things that I saw this week. Paragraphs, that's the other thing. I know some of you are like working in Word and then you copy and paste in and some of your formatting goes haywire. Make sure that you try and get paragraphs into your post somehow. It just makes it so much easier for the reader to read your writing. If not, it just seems like you're just like blabbing on and on and on and you don't have like a clear introduction, body, and conclusion. So these are just kind of some of my little ones. I know that's a lot writing heavy, and the reason for that is when you take online courses, most of our communication happens through writing. So that's really important that we are writing in a proper format. At the college level. So modules this week. So this week we are going to cover Tragedy of the Commons. Tragedy of the Commons is not in your textbook. So it is a, oh no, I hope my internet, why is my internet not working now? Why is this not working? So Tragedy of the Commons is what we will be covering this week. Oh, if you have any issues with what is due or what are my requirements, this course information session is a wonderful tool to use. So you have all your directions, all those sorts of things here. So we covered the introduction session this week. This week is Tragedy of the Commons. As you can see, there's no textbook chapter that correlates with the forum post. So you'll see here, there's just a PowerPoint that I made up. And so the Tragedy of the Commons, it deals with this specific article right here. This is going to be the backbone of our course. So if you haven't read it now, you need to make sure you read it for this week or the midterm exam. But you should all use it in your forum post this week. Even if you're answering the question that deals with the doc or the one that you're dealing with in terms of the invasive species, you should include in those forums, besides those other articles, you should also use Tragedy of the Commons as your second source. So Tragedy of the Commons is this fantastic article that was written in the 1960s. It's a rebuttal to a paper that was written in the 1800s. In the 1800s, William Foster wrote this, Foster Lloyd wrote this paper on populations. And he said, listen, the big issue is going to be that we look for our short-term gains rather than the long-term interests of society. So we're going to keep breeding, right? Because no one's really going to stop us, plus we're infringing upon someone's freedom. And he said the issue is that we need to figure out ways that we can not take away people's personal freedoms while trying to solve the commons problems. He actually talked about taking away freedoms by privatizing things. So this is William Foster Lloyd in the 1800s. He said, if we privatize, then most likely you're going to take care of things. So if you privatize land, you'll own this little portion of your land and you'll take care of it. It's not always true. There's always workarounds to that. We're talking about slumlords. Not everybody takes care of their property. There's just lots of things with it. Also, if you privatize, is something really a commons anymore? So is it a shared space by all? Remember, a commons is a shared space, and that's I go over that in that PowerPoint. And then along in the 1960s, Garrett Hardin wrote this rebuttal to William Foster Lloyd, and he said, listen, privatization doesn't always work. He gives some really good examples. Parks are a wonderful example, and right now that's a big issue going on with the government shutdown. If you don't know, in some of the national parks, people have cut down the Joshua tree, which is a tree that is an endangered type species, and people are going into these parks, leaving their garbage, doing all sorts of things. It's really, really bad. I guess if a private company owned them right now, it would solve that issue. But right now, parks are still open to the public, and so that's an issue, is that we haven't privatized national parks yet. And Garrett Hardin in this article actually talks about privatizing national parks. But remember, again, if we privatize national parks, we take away people's rights to enter them, and then it's not a shared space. So we always want to keep common shared space. So Garrett Hardin came along and talked about all these technical solutions that have been implemented to help solve the tragedy of the commons problem, which is that we look for a short-term gain instead of thinking about the long-term interests of society. And it gives you all these examples. He talks about the welfare society. He talks about mutual corrosion, that we make people think that they're not losing their rights, like parking meters, but in reality they are losing their rights to park wherever they want. And so that has been used, but we always see people working around that. People don't pay their tickets. There's all sorts of things. So what Garrett Hardin says in his paper is the fact that these technical solutions don't work. And the reason they don't work is we always need, in tragedy of the commons situations, in any solution, we also need an extension in morality, which means that there has to be a moral component to the technical solutions or they do not work. So make sure you read this article here with that in mind, is that he's given you all of these examples of technical solutions and why they don't work and why they need an extension in morality. Okay. Also, you'll see here there are some additional articles, because these questions here don't have a textbook chapter. You have a lot of articles you have to read, because they're going to be your sources that you use. In initial posts, I don't want you using outside sources. I really want you really should use the information that I give you to answer the questions. Now, you have to have at least one source I've given you. I really would rather you not go outside and look. If you're going to go outside and look, you definitely have to use my sources as the main running theme through your answer. If you want to just add something a little supplemental, you're more than welcome to do that. But you have to use at least the sources that I have given you. And you'll see in there I talk about tragedy of the commons in terms of invasive species. This is when humans look for their short-term gain by bringing in a species to either solve a problem, or because they think a plant is pretty, or because they think a fish is awesome and exotic, or a turtle's really cool to have. But what they forget is that when they release that into the wild, the long-term interests on society are huge, meaning that they take over and kill other species that are native to the ecosystem. So these are big issues in terms of invasive species. Okay, so this week we have our initial post due by Wednesday, our response post by Friday. You have an easy week this week, because if you notice here coming up, you don't have there is no quiz related to this chapter reading, so you get a 1 week of a little bit of a bye. So don't forget, by tonight 11:59 you have your session 1 introduction quiz. Please remember that the quizzes only deal with the chapter reading. They don't deal with the additional articles that you're given under your session to read. It's always important to read all the information I give you, because some of those articles I'm going to pull from my midterm exam. So it's really important that you're keeping up with the readings. If not, around midterm time, you're going to find yourself swamped. Okay, if you have any questions or concerns or anything, feel free to reach out, and I look forward to having another successful week with you.